LeBron James appeared to injure his right foot on this play in Sunday's game against the Mavericks. On the court, he seemed to be saying he heard a pop, and after the game, he had a pretty significant limp walking out of the arena. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and if you're new here and enjoy learning about the underlying anatomy and mechanisms of different sports injuries, then consider subscribing to stay up to date with all my future videos. LeBron has this uncanny ability to seemingly play through pain. When he suffers all these countless little ankle sprains or tweaks we've seen in the past, he just tightens up his shoes and continues to go on his way. The big concerning thing with this play initially was that LeBron was on the court saying he heard a pop. Now, of course, whenever we hear about a pop and a lower leg injury, we think about the Achilles. So if we look at this in slow motion, I think point number one is, do we see any sort of snap or tear to the Achilles or the gastrocnemius muscle, the calf muscle here on the backside? But we don't see that. There's no clear evidence here of any kind of snap or recoil in the Achilles, the calf muscle. So certainly Achilles would be scratched off of our list. And also he would not have been able to play the rest of the game if he had any significant Achilles or calf injury. The second thing people probably think of with a snap is the plantar fascia. Of course, the plantar fascia is this thick band of connective tissue that runs on the underside of your foot. Specifically, it goes from the calcaneus or the heel bone out to the toes. Now, it's not shown on this model, but there's actually three different cords of the plantar fascia: a medial, a central, and a lateral cord. And certainly athletes can get just plantar fasciitis, which is just sort of micro trauma injury to the plantar fascia, but you can also actually completely tear or snap your plantar fascia. That typically occurs though when the foot is in more severe plantar flexion, when someone is up on the ball of their feet pushing off. Here, LeBron's right foot is pretty flat to the ground. He really doesn't get up that much on the ball of his foot, and when he does, all of his weight is over here on his left leg because he's pushing up off of his left leg to go up for this play. So plantar fascia rupture, yes, would be on the differential here, but not something that I would think of immediately just based on mainly the position of his foot. Here, of course, the plantar fascia is not really under that much tension when the foot is in this neutral position. LeBron never goes really up on his toes aggressively, so it's on the list, but I would say much lower. The first thing I thought of when I saw the play was actually a midfoot injury, specifically a midfoot ligament injury because of how he heard, or seemingly there was this pop. We can also see how he tends to be kind of grabbing right at the middle portion of his foot, which again, usually you are going to grab the area that hurts. When we hear about a midfoot injury though, of course, we all think about a Liz Frank injury. That's probably going to be the most detrimental for an athlete's health, and what we recently saw happen with the likes of Chet Holmgren. So let's analyze this a little bit with the mindset of a possible Liz Frank injury. So in a non-traumatic Liz Frank mechanism, typically what occurs is somebody pushes off of a plantar flexed foot, and there's some sort of forefoot movement or forefoot movement kind of out to the side. So if we look with our anatomy tool here and I kind of look at the top of the foot, the forefoot is basically this portion right through here. With a Liz Frank injury, usually there is some component of forefoot movement out to the side where you get a stationary midfoot with the forefoot moving, which causes this shear force through that Liz Frank area. With LeBron, you could argue there's a little bit of that forefoot movement, right? Because his momentum is trying to turn and push him up towards the basket. So initially, right, he's going off this direction and he's trying to turn and push that way. So he's going to be pushing out a little bit with his right foot, but he's not pushing off of a plantar flexed foot. By the time his foot and ankle get into a plantar flexed position here, all of his weight has been transferred over to the left side. And so he's not putting as much axial load through that right foot. The most recent example of this, of course, was Chet Holmgren. And we can see here with Chet, he steps backward. All of his weight is now on that right foot. It's on the ball of his foot. And then you see that little kind of twist outward in his foot when that Liz Frank injury occurred. So very different from what we saw here with LeBron. Here, Chet's weight is almost entirely on that right foot. We see him pushing to explode up off of it. So pushing off of that plantar flexed position. And then we see that forefoot movement outward right there that I was talking about with the anatomy model. So yeah, if we hear about some sort of foot sprain, that would definitely fit with this, but overall, not like absolutely conclusive for, yes, I'm super worried about a Liz Frank. And now we got to talk about this whole pop thing, because I think that's what made people so concerned, is seeing LeBron on the court mouthing that he heard a pop. First of all, in my mind, there's a big difference between somebody saying they heard a pop and somebody saying they felt a pop. Whenever an athlete ruptures their Achilles, tears their ACL, they will tell us they felt a pop, not necessarily they heard a pop. With like an Achilles, people will describe it as it felt like somebody kicked them in the back of the leg. With an ACL, they'll say it felt like something popped. So the fact that LeBron said multiple times he heard a pop more so than he felt a pop sounds like it's nothing, but honestly to me is more reassuring, because usually these ligaments, these tissues that rupture in our body, it's more of a feeling that people get of that pop, sort of that energy burst, rather than just a pure sound. When I think of a pure sound, I think more of just like a knuckle cracking, right? You know how you can just crack your joints. That's what I think of when I hear a pop, as opposed to feeling a pop. So I'm hoping that's at least a good prognostic sign. And the final good prognostic thing, of course, is that LeBron managed to play the rest of the game at a decently high level. When we're talking about these injuries, even if it is something like a Liz Frank ligament injury, there's a difference between something that is stable or unstable. So ligaments, of course, connect bones to bones. And if these ligaments are completely torn, then the bones move. We call that an unstable injury. But if the ligaments are only partially torn, then the bones and the joints can still stay in place, and it's a stable injury. If LeBron had some sort of an unstable ligament injury in his foot, I can't imagine any possibility he would have been able to continue playing the rest of the game and playing at the level that he did. So that is another part that tells me this is more likely a stable ligament or a stable soft tissue injury rather than an unstable one. And of course, an unstable one is going to be a much longer absence. So overall, I'm more optimistic than I am pessimistic about a long absence for LeBron. It would not surprise me at all if he does miss a few games with some sort of nondescript foot strain or foot sprain or foot soreness, but the fact that he continued playing suggests this isn't an unstable, clearly surgical type of thing, and really the energy transfer through his foot to me didn't line up exactly like what we'd see for something that would clearly be a really long kind of multi-week or multi-month absence. So that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed kind of taking a look inside my brain as I'm watching this clip, thinking about all these different factors. I suspect we'll hear more tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised if LeBron gets an MRI here and we find out more details. I'll update you accordingly. Thank you as always for watching. Let me know any questions or comments down below, and I'll see you later.